Yeah, so my name is Jason Madar. I'm an instructor computer science here at Capilano. I also had about 30 years of experience both teaching and working in industry. I guess I like variety. I like it that I get to do different things, right? So I started my career teaching because I've always enjoyed the academic environment. And then I pivoted to industry because I wanted to be more hands-on. After doing that for a while, I realized that I missed the human connection, helping people understand things. I find that extremely rewarding. So I decided this is what I want to do. To the entire world, it actually, I mean, even for people in tech, unless you're working deep inside, say, like the Google AI division or something like that, right? Our first interaction with generative AI, the technology that is essentially all that we talk about now, like ChatGPT, LLM technology, that was really overnight. That was October 2022, I believe. However, the entire AI field, I've been actually working in that field for a long time. Like you can even stretch it out all the way back to my graduate work, which is back in 1999. I was already working on that. Back then, they didn't call it AI. We called it data mining, right? Which is using data to discover relationships, but the same concept. So that technology has been in development for a long, long time, right? To the world, it seemed like it's overnight because, with technology, there are always this kind of plateau where it just seems like, like for example, you look at cell phones. It's been around forever. iPhone 3 and iPhone 16, the difference isn't that dramatic. But then once every 15 years, something dramatic happened. It's an evolution, but a really big step in evolution. And that's what happened in 2022, is that there was a big step. I find myself sometimes fully embracing it, sometimes banning it. First of all, there's a problem of understanding the technology, right? We don't all understand it at the same level. So some people might be banning it because they didn't quite understand its capabilities, or that they thought it's more capable than it really is. For those that are embracing it, I mean, they probably, and just like myself, they probably recognize this is such an important technology that is, once it's out the bottle, like you can't put the genie back in the bottle. Like there's just no way you can contain it. So you might as well embrace it. The problem is that it's hard to embrace something that people don't truly understand. And I have to admit, right? Like I spend countless hours and days and months, even years, trying to understand it at a level that can be applied in the classroom. And even then, I'm struggling. That's number one. Number two is that depending on what you are learning, there are times when you really shouldn't be using it. But then there are times when you should full on say that, you know what, this is what we're doing, right? This is how I build something bigger. And I think it has to do with scale. If you're learning the basic mechanics of your field, you really shouldn't be using AI. But if you're trying to put all those mechanics together into a bigger form of product, then, I mean, the working world expect you to use AI. Well, first of all, we all know that AI is excellent if you ask it the right questions. It's actually better than, let's say, a Google search. So AI is great at that. If you're using it to learn, that's wonderful. But then the problem is, if you don't know the basics, you cannot learn from AI because AI make mistakes. That's what I meant by it doesn't understand the bigger stuff. If you give it just a really high-level description, you'll make tons of mistakes, make tons of assumptions. You'll get something that's essentially what they now call AI slop. You have to be much more detailed and you have to be much more critical. And there's an iterative process when you're using AI that I think a lot of students, if they're trying to use AI simply to save time in their homework, for example, then they're not going to appreciate what is actually really good at. It appears to be good at doing your homework, but it actually isn't. That's what I'm hoping that students would understand. I try to, and it's a constant struggle because we still don't understand the best practices of using AI in the classroom. We are still exploring it, and I'm trying my best to also push the envelope there. I myself would separate, different activities. Some activities are please use AI, and some activities are please do not use AI, or even outright banning AI. And I would try to justify the activities to all my students, saying that this is why you should be using it. This is why you shouldn't be using it. I can't police everybody, right? So, there are times when I just have to trust that the students themselves would take the responsibility of education onto themselves. That's the key, is that I think students have to understand that the responsibility of education resides not on me and the instructors, but resides on you. So I'm really hoping that every time I'm almost like preaching to say that please, this is for your own good, right? I will make sure I test you, but I can't police everybody. Right? That's what I'm hoping. But yeah, I try to make sure that I outline that this assignment, if you use AI, you're lying to yourself. This assignment, if you don't use AI, you're hurting yourself. If you read the articles, if you watch the news, you're gonna hear all sorts of magical things that AI can do. Sometimes even people in tech, especially let's say like major tech CEOs and whatnot, they like to hype things up to a level where it's almost unrealistic. Oh, it is unrealistic. But then in the real working world, I interface with a lot of people. We are starting to understand that AI is great, but AI is really bad in many things. And if you believe the hype, you would be pushing AI to do things that it's not meant to do, right? It's a very, very simple example. I think it was one of the big consulting company wrote a report to, or they were contracted to write a report for one of the major governments. The report has references that were AI hallucinated. They were made up by AI. So the people that were responsible for building the report probably believe that AI can actually do the reference check for them. They like to hook you in with their massive product. They like to hook consumers in with their free tier products. Like we use ChatGPT is free, but it's not really free. It costs so much money, right? So eventually they're gonna take it back. Eventually they're gonna restrict usage. Eventually, and not even eventually, they have your data, so they can do whatever they want with whatever data that they collect from you. So there's a lot of issues with just relying on big tech companies. But as regular people, if you want to take control back, we will have to be very prudent in our own cost control, because none of us has the budget or the technical know-how to buy a $50,000 machine, put it in our house and run our own chatbot, right? So I think that, to me, that's part of taking back control, is to show people that there are ways to do this cheaply and also effectively. And in a way, if you're running your own chatbot, you strip away all the hype and you would understand exactly how it works because you're running it yourself. I think this may be controversial, but I think that AI has the ability to level the playing field, but only if you're trained well on what is capable of and what is not capable of. And it is not just from me. A lot of tech visionaries would agree that there are some tasks that AI will completely replace. There's no more horse-drawn carriages, right? So AI is that engine where it's going to replace a lot of current work. But then, if you are well educated in AI, there are a set of jobs that before people can actually get to, that is now, it literally leveled the playing field, where And coding is one of those things. Sophisticated coding, right? Building, Amazon, building Google, right? That is still in the realm of software engineers and scientists and all of that. Building AI itself, that is still part of their domain. All right. But there is a set of coding jobs where it used to be impossible for regular people to do, but is now available because of this phenomenon called vibe coding. And that's one example where it is leveling the playing field as we speak. And I'm very excited about that, actually. AI is not magical. It doesn't just understand things, right? You have to train it with enough data so that it can generalize. It trains on all the books in the world, and then it somehow has this ability to generalize so that it can spit out new passages. It's technically not a repeat of what it read. It does not remember what it read. It synthesizes. In terms of copyright, we have an issue. We know that AI, all the major AIs are trained on copyright materials, especially the proprietary ones. We know that because there are court cases that already shown that. But the output of AI, you cannot with 100% certainty prove that the output of AI is coming from a particular passage or coming from 2 or 3 particular passages. It really remixes everything and spit out something that appears original. So in that sense, how is the current copyright law supposed to deal with that? Because the current copyright law has to do with direct copying. Yeah, so it's a fascinating field. It's still evolving. I have no clue how the courts are actually going to deal with it. But if you look at the current copyright law, I mean, remixes is not copyright violation as far as I know. Well, depending on, of course, there are a lot of subtleties involved, but... Yeah, no, the legal system is definitely playing catch up. I mean, 2022, October or November, that was when this dropped, the ChatGPT was dropped on everybody, almost like literally overnight, right? So the legal system had no chance to catch up. There are signs, though, that the legal system is starting to speed up, because it has to essentially adapt to the speed of technology. But yeah, I think it's still playing massive catch up. I looked at cases all the time, and you would have 2 different judges with two very similar cases having different judgments, right? So it's still, there's no telling how it's gonna go. Because otherwise you have AI slobs. I love that term. AI slob, the first time I heard of it was in my class when I asked students to do presentations, and young people were saying that these are AI slob. It was a few years ago. And then I realized that, the young people actually understood, more instinctively understood more, right? So without agency, you are producing things that are soulless, that are just mindless remix. Like almost random remixes of previous knowledge, right? But with human agency involved, you can create something truly creative because you can take what AI outputs and modify it and make it so that it is truly original. It used to be that web designers would design websites or apps and then hand it over to the coders to actually do the coding because coding is very technical. With vibe coding, those 2 jobs can be collapsed into one. Certain sophisticated coding jobs, you still need a software engineer to help. But I mean, if you just want to build a website or something like that, right? You don't need to hire a coder, right? If you know how to vibe code, right? If you know how to read just a little bit of code, you will be able to do the whole thing yourself. For web designers, I think that it is the expectation when somebody hires a web designer is not just to draw me a pretty website, is to actually draw me a pretty website, code it, and make it actually functional. Things are not going to be easier for web designers. It's actually going to be just a little harder, right? Because if you generate a code, you have to understand it, you have to make modifications to it, you have to make it actually work, you have to understand where it breaks, you have to know how to test it, all of that. But instead of hiring 2 people, now you hire 1. So tell me where the opportunities are. I mean, there could be even more opportunities, because building a website may actually be cheaper for the end user because they only have to hire 1 person. That's the part that I'm most excited about, right? And this is all because AI is actually really good at coding. It's one of those things where nobody expected how good it is. I love it when, or I love it and hate it when chatbot says, well, here's what I think. Because chatbot has no sense of what I actually means. But big companies, they train their chatbot. For better or worse, it could be by accident, but even if it's by accident, I think that they should actually fix it. But I mean, a lot of times when you work with a chatbot, eventually the chatbot would speak as if it were an entity that's speaking to you, while in fact it was just remixing all the answers and creating a coherent response, or creating a statistically coherent response. The tech companies, instead of saying that AI can make mistakes at the bottom, maybe they should also say that this is not an entity that understands anything. Maybe they should make sure that the answers does not have I, like that kind of pronoun. Like there are so many things that the tech companies can do when they actually train the AI, that I believe that the tech company are choosing not to do it. Talking to ChatGPT is way more engaging than talking or doing a Google search, right? I mean, so if that draws people in, that's what they're going to be doing. Yeah, that's essentially what I worry about most, is that the public has no idea what this technology is capable of and start putting it into places where it is inappropriate or even harmful, which is why I'm trying really hard to mitigate that in my own little way. I think counseling would be a really bad thing. And it's already happening in many cases, right? People, instead of talking to professionals, decided to talk to an AI about their problems. Even the tech companies themselves don't understand, because the AI just remixes answers. So even the creators don't exactly know when it would, what kind of answers it would be producing. Yeah, I think that with vibe coding, that has become like #1 priority, I think. Because a lot of jobs that used to require coding will no longer require a dedicated coder. The base skill set of our population, I think, has just increased, not decreased. Because now, in order to execute anything, in order to produce anything in the digital world, there will be a bunch of jobs that expect what I would call end-to-end execution by one person or a very, very small team. Like the web designer, as we mentioned earlier, right, means that they have to learn coding. Heck, journalists may have to learn coding just so that they can publish their own a site, right? With vibe coding helping, people can be so much more productive, but their base knowledge will have to increase. Yeah, so you don't even need to start with AI. You start with coding and then slowly go into, AI, go into vibe coding and all of that. So I think it's a continuum. We should start them, as early as possible, like right around from kindergarten. We should give them little puzzles to solve. We keep laddering and we keep framing it around this computational thinking. And by the time they get to like grade 3 or 4, they can write their first line of code, well, even earlier maybe. One thing that I am slightly concerned about is the AI backlash. Some Gen Zs seem to have a very negative opinion of AI. And I'm afraid that, as in any technology, there is good and there's bad. What I worry about is if you focus on all the bad, you're not really appreciating the good. and you get run over essentially by the tsunami that's ahead of us. AI is not sentient. AI is literally a tool that can either be used for good or bad. Just because some people use it for bad doesn't mean that you have to use it for bad. Know it and use it to your advantage. That's what I hope that they would take away from it. I think that educators will have to be, like it or not, the bridge to bring this base level AI knowledge into the public consciousness. In a way, we educators, we train students for the workforce. If the workforce expects AI usage, we have to change our way of teaching so that we prepare our students to use AI effectively in the workforce. I believe in young people figuring things out. This AI backlash is part of that kind of immune response. I'm concerned about it, but I think that as a species can figure it out. And I think that we're going to come out on the other side way better. Like everyone's going to be way more productive. We're all going to be doing work that is way more rewarding. Education is really key here, right? Like we have to set expectations of our students coming in. We can't educate the same way we educate in the last 50 100 years anymore. I think this remix machine is actually quite revolutionary. But yeah, I'm generally a tech optimist. So yeah, I'm full of hope, I think.